Zack Snyder became the center of a movement when his version of Justice League was finally released on HBO Max as Zack Snyder's Justice League. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. The 4-hour epic was a rework of the 2017 team-up film which he worked on and quit midway to deal with his daughter's death by S***side. The recut reportedly cost the studio $70 million. However, the 4-hour superhero drama's $70 million budget did not include Zack Snyder's salary for the film. He was reportedly not paid for his involvement, which he eventually used as leverage to retain creative control. However, before the Snyder Cut was decided to be released, the filmmaker reportedly had another tiring conversation with WB executives. Zack Snyder's salary for reworking on the 4.5-hour cut of Justice League was a whopping $0, but it was not entirely bad. However, midway through the film, Snyder and his wife and producer Deborah Snyder left the film to deal with the death of their daughter Autumn, who died by S***side. Joss Whedon was brought in to take over, rewrite, and reshoot the film, although Snyder retained director credit. The result was a tonally bipolar film that ended up being a box office bomb. Zack Snyder's tenure as the director of Justice League is one for the books. He was hired as the architect of the DCU back in the 2010s with Man of Steel, but audience and critic reactions to the darker and commercially underperforming films led studio executives to keep him under supervision while the epic team-up film was being made. "I'm not getting paid. I didn't want to be beholden to anyone, and it allowed me to keep my negotiating powers with these people pretty strong." The revisions, which included reshoots and work on VFX, reportedly cost the studio an additional $70 million. However, there were many advantages to shelling out so much money for the studio, as Snyder detailed to them in a meeting. As the Release the Snyder Cut movement became more aggressive and far-reaching, WB announced that the reworked version would be released as an HBO Max event, with Zack Snyder working on a 4-hour edit. However, the filmmaker reportedly did not get any money for his involvement. He told Vanity Fair, when WB finally decided to curb the movement by giving the fans what they wanted, they initially told Snyder to just hand over the rough cut. However, Zack Snyder was reportedly against that. He said, before Zack Snyder left 2017's Justice League to deal with the death in the family, the filmmaker reportedly took home the laptop and hard drive which had the rough cut of his edit. He reportedly planned on showing it to his friends who dropped by. He also began releasing some images to fan the flame of the Release the Snyder Cut movement. I was like, that's a no, that's a hard no. And they're like, but why? You can just put up the rough cut. I go, here's why. 3 reasons. 1. You get the internet off your back, which is probably your main reason for wanting to do this. 2. You get to feel vindicated for making things right, I guess, on some level. And then 3. You get a S***itty version of the movie that you can point at and go, see? It's not that good anyway. So maybe I was right. There were significant changes from Joss Whedon's theatrically released film to Zack Snyder's Justice League, which included an increased runtime, chapter-wise division of the film, extended scenes with Barry Allen, a new epilogue, and better, much better, VFX. Zack Snyder's Justice League is available to stream on Max. Zack Snyder wants to make a TV show for Netflix, but his idea is allegedly too taboo. Welcome to Stats In. If you're just joining us, please subscribe and don't forget to turn on notifications bell for more video. Following the long-awaited release of Zack Snyder's Justice League, the former DCU director has kept busy with a new slate of cinematic projects, such as Army of the Dead and Rebel Moon Part 1, with Part 2 expected to release this year. However, the filmmaker's interests are not limited to the big screen. According to him, he has an idea for a television series that streamers just won't pick up. Rebel Moon, release, cast and everything we know. Zack Snyder pitched a TV show to Netflix, but the streaming giant ultimately turned it down when Zack Snyder was asked by Joe Rogan on the Joe Rogan Experience whether he ever considered doing a Netflix series. Snyder answered, I pitched them Fountainhead, but no one wants to make it. Yeah, we've talked about it a lot. I mean, nobody wants Fountainhead, but that's what I wanted to do. I pitched them Fountainhead, because I've written this super adaptation of that book. I think it would be amazing, but no one wants to make it because they think it's taboo. Ayn Rand is taboo. For reference, The Fountainhead is a 1943 novel written by Russian-American author Ayn Rand, which follows an architect who refuses to give in to accepted, conventional standards and pressures. When Rogan asked why Ayn Rand is considered taboo, the director admitted some think the book's a fascist propaganda piece, but to him, it is a direct comment on making a movie. I don't know. She's taboo amongst the intelligentsia because they think she's a fascist and they think the book's a fascist propaganda piece. That's not why I like the book. I happen to like it because, to me, it's a direct comment on making a movie, right? A movie about an architect who won't make the buildings everyone wants them to make, and the struggle he goes through to get the buildings made the way he wants to make them. Of course, I like that. I'm sure there's plenty of movie directors that don't like Fountainhead, but I just think it says so much. Given that Snyder is known for his trademark style, and fans fought for him to release his Justice League vision, it is easy to understand why such a story speaks to the filmmaker. Snyder went on to explain how Ayn Rand arrived at her story for the Fountainhead and why it is one thing he had that he has always wanted to do. Ayn Rand wrote Fountainhead in direct response to being noted on a script that she had written. She had been studying this movie about skyscrapers and she kept submitting versions of the script and they kept noting her until it was unrecognizable. And then she was like, this is what happens to work. It gets noted till it disintegrates or disappears. So yeah, that's one thing I had that I've always wanted to do. But I don't know that the world will allow that. It is worth noting that Zack Snyder had not always planned for his adaptation of The Fountainhead to be a TV show. In talking with the New York Times in 2021, he referred to the project as a movie and noted its potential for divisiveness, saying, "We need a less divided country." Fountainhead right now is on the back burner, and I don't know how that movie gets made, at least not right away. We need a less divided country and a little more liberal government to make that movie, so people don't react to it in a certain way. As to why the writer and her work is supposedly a touchy subject, Zack Snyder admitted he's exclusively a Fountainhead fanatic. Atlas shrugged. Fair. I mean, you can play with that. I'm pretty exclusively a Fountainhead fanatic. Also, because it's melodrama too. It's the most melodramatic thing ever. But it goes even farther back than that. He discussed the project with The Hollywood Reporter in 2016, calling the book a thesis on the creative process and what it is to create something. We have The Last Photograph that I've been working on for a long time. It's a small, sort of weird project about a war photographer in Afghanistan. I have been working on The Fountainhead. I've always felt like The Fountainhead was such a thesis on the creative process and what it is to create something. Warner Brothers owns Ayn Rand's script and I've just been working on that a little bit. When asked if it would strike the wrong tone given recent political events, he said, "I think so. But we'll see. I'm in no rush." No rush is right and nothing new for the filmmaker. Back in 2018, Deadline reported that The Fountainhead was supposed to be Zack Snyder's next project. Anyone who knows Zack Snyder's story gets why The Fountainhead is appealing to the filmmaker. And, since the Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice director is best known for